Have you ever paused and asked yourself, who truly knew God before humanity existed? Before Adam opened his eyes in Eden, before Eve breathed beneath the trees? Were there other beings who already gazed upon the face of God? Scripture whispers of them, mysterious figures called sons of God. They were there when the foundations of the earth were laid. They sang when the stars were born. They rejoiced when oceans roared into existence. But who were they? Were they angels? Or something even higher? Were they guardians of ancient realms? Were they part of a divine council, standing in the courts of heaven, long before our story began? Imagine it. A time when earth was formless, silent, covered in darkness, yet heaven was already alive. There were witnesses to the first sunrise. There were voices that echoed, "Holy," long before human worship ever began. And these witnesses, these beings, they knew God not by faith but by sight. Did they speak with him? Walk with him? Stand in awe as galaxies unfolded? Did they tremble when God sculpted man from dust, knowing creation was forever changed? What did they see that we have never seen? What did they know that we are still trying to understand? Were they joyful or jealous when humanity arrived? And could their ancient choices still echo through the world we live in today? If this question stirs something deep within you, stay. Because what we are about to uncover is not merely history, it's prehistory. A forgotten realm that existed before dust became man. Before we step beyond Eden and enter this sacred mystery, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. You're watching Gospel Insights, where hidden truths are brought into the light. Before the ticking of time, before any star dared to shine, there existed only the endless presence of God. No sun, no sky, no ground beneath existence, only the eternal, infinite being who needed nothing, yet chose to create everything. In that realm of pure divinity, where silence was not emptiness but majesty, there were also witnesses. We call them the sons of God. They were not born of earth. They never tasted breath or felt the pull of gravity. They existed in a dimension beyond flesh, fashioned by divine will, dwelling in the brilliance of his presence. They did not believe in God. They saw him. They did not worship in longing. They worshipped in awe. It is written that when God laid the foundation of the earth, they sang. Imagine that moment. Imagine nothing. Then suddenly everything. A voice. God's voice, piercing through the void with a single command. Let there be light. And at that moment, light burst forth, racing across the newborn universe like fire unleashed. Galaxies swirled into spirals. Stars burst open like diamonds in the night. Oceans gathered in their basins. Mountains rose like giants. Creation groaned into life. And there they were, the sons of God, shouting in wonder, crying out in worship. Their voices were not whispers. They were thunder. They were songs woven into the wind. They watched as God separated light from darkness. They saw colors appear for the first time. They witnessed the birth of song itself. For every wave that crashed, every breeze that danced, carried the echo of his word. They did not question his power. They were consumed by it. But then, something happened that silenced even them. God descended, not to speak, but to shape. He reached toward the dust, not with a command, but with his hands. Imagine the shock among the heavenly host. The infinite God who had spoken galaxies into position was now bending over a small patch of earth, forming something with intention, with tenderness. They had seen him create by law, but now they saw him create by love. From the soil, he formed a frame, shoulders, hands, a face. Not a star, not a beast, but something different. A creature that resembled nothing they had ever seen. A being with eyes that would one day reflect divine glory. A body destined to carry a purpose beyond instinct. A soul that could choose. They felt a divine shift. For the first time, God was imprinting something with his own image. Not his power, not his authority, his likeness. Silence fell across the heavens. The sons of God, who had seen supernovas ignite and planets spin, were now watching the greatest mystery of all, God breathing into clay, and man became a living soul. What did they feel in that moment? Did they rejoice at the birth of a new creation? Did they tremble at the mystery of a being who could one day walk beside God, speak with him, choose him, or deny him? Perhaps among them were whispers. What is this creature? Why such care? Why such glory? They watched as God placed this new creation in Eden, a garden unlike anything on earth or heaven. They saw him walk with man, not from a throne but side by side. They saw God teach man to speak, to name, to rule. They saw love between creator and created, personal, gentle, intimate. This was different. This was deeper. Some among the sons of God were overcome with wonder, worshiping the wisdom of God. But others felt something new, a question, a curiosity, perhaps even a hidden fire they had never known. Envy. Why would dust be shown such favor? They who had seen eternity could not comprehend this bond between God and man. They saw a creature who could fall, yet was treasured, fragile, yet beloved, mortal, yet crowned. Here lies the ancient mystery. The sons of God were more than heavenly choir members. They were part of a drama that began before sin, before pride, before the fall of man. Their reactions, their choices, their secrets would one day clash with humanity in ways we are only beginning to see. And so, before our story begins, theirs was already moving, silent, powerful, untold. They were here before us, and they are not gone. Before earth ever bore fruit, before birds sang on branches or rivers cut through stone, there existed a realm of unimaginable order, not chaos, not solitude, but majesty, structured, governed, sacred. It was not a kingdom of chance. It was a kingdom of counsel. This was the divine counsel. When people imagine heaven, they often picture endless light and solitary worship. But Scripture reveals something far deeper. God, enthroned in glory, surrounded by holy beings, not as servants only, but as witnesses, advisors, and stewards of celestial administration. A heavenly court, gathered not to govern God, but to participate in his unfolding will. The prophet writes, God stands in the assembly. He judges among the gods. It is a scene of astonishing wonder. God not alone, but among created sons who bear authority. These were not mortals. They were not myth. They were real, ancient, and powerful. Imagine entering that assembly, thrones set in order, flames flickering like voices, a sea of glass reflecting eternity, beings radiant as lightning, yet silent in the presence of the Almighty. No one speaks unless spoken to. No thought rises without reverence. For before them sits the one who formed thought itself. They did not come to suggest, they came to listen. The sons of God stood as divine witnesses, beholders of plans, carriers of decrees, watchers of cosmic destinies. When God spoke of galaxies, they bowed. When he spoke of Earth's foundations, they rejoiced. And when the idea of mankind was uttered, they trembled with awe. In this council, mysteries were unveiled. Realms were assigned. Some were given stars to command, others lands to watch. They were appointed not merely as spectators, but as stewards, celestial governors over unseen dominions. They held trust. They bore responsibility. They were part of heaven's design. But then came a decree unlike any other. God revealed that he would form a being in his own image, not from fire or spirit, but from dust. A creature not eternal, yet destined for eternity. A being lower than angels, yet crowned with potential to one day judge angels. The council was stunned. Dust would walk with deity. It was a decision that echoed through the halls of heaven. Some bowed in praise, marveling at the humility of God. Others remained silent, not out of rebellion, but out of confusion. Why give clay such glory? Why grant breath such intimacy? This was no ordinary creation. This was inheritance. God was not simply forming life, He was forming children. In this moment, the story of humanity became forever entangled with the story of the sons of God. For some among them embraced the mystery. They would watch over mankind, guide, and guard. But others would one day burn with a question that would become temptation. Why should mortals, born yesterday, be given destiny? It is here that the balance of eternity trembled. Not yet broken, but strained. Not yet divided, but tested. A cosmic tension, silent and unseen, began to form. The tale of devotion and the tale of defiance both took root in that single council hall. From that day forward, humanity was no longer an idea. It was a destiny that the heavenly sons would either honor or challenge. So, who were the sons of God? They were witnesses, stewards, counselors, guardians. They walked ancient corridors where stars were assigned and seasons were spoken. They were there before us. They remain beyond us. And some would one day walk among us. While some among the heavenly sons were silent with wonder at the mystery of mankind, others made a quiet vow. They would watch over this fragile creation. These were the loyal watchers, not assigned by force but drawn by devotion. They understood something profound. Humanity was not a threat to heaven. Humanity was a reflection of God's heart. These watchers, radiant and ancient, stood in reverence as God placed man in Eden. They saw God walk with Adam in the cool of the morning. They heard the laughter of innocence. They saw a love deeper than power, a creator delighting in his creation. It moved them. Unlike stars that burn without choice, man could choose to love. Unlike winds that obey without thought, man could seek God freely. This mystery stirred the purest among the sons of God. They did not envy man. They marveled at him. These loyal watchers became guardians, unseen yet ever present. They would not interfere unless permitted. They held a silent duty to protect the unfolding plan of God, to defend the story of redemption before it even began. Imagine them observing Adam learn to speak, to name creatures, to marvel at Eden's rivers. They were high above, yet deeply invested. For the first time, these eternal beings witnessed something heaven itself did not possess: childlike wonder. They watched Adam and Eve discover beauty, not with memory, but with curiosity. Every sunrise was new to them. Every scent, every breeze, a fresh gift. Perhaps a loyal watcher whispered within himself, "These beings cannot fly, yet they reach for heaven. They cannot see God's throne, yet they long for His voice." They saw in mankind a different kind of worship, one that rose not from sight, but from trust, and this moved them more than any celestial hymn. They became silent sentinels. When Adam slept, they watched. When Eve walked beneath the trees, they observed. They were witnesses to love, guardians of hope. They understood, if humanity remained faithful, a future would unfold that even angels could not fathom. Yet they also sensed a coming danger. For where loyalty dwells, opposition arises. In the quiet of Eden's perfection, currents of dissent were rising elsewhere, not among the loyal watchers, but among those who once stood in the same courts, saw the same glory, yet held a different fire within them. Those dissenting ones, hidden in silence, did not rejoice at man's creation. They questioned it. They feared a future where God would walk among dust and call it family. In them brewed a question that would soon become a rebellion. But the loyal watchers did not flinch. They understood the risk embedded in love. Love chooses. Love allows freedom. The God who could have ruled by command had instead chosen covenant, and covenant requires vulnerability. So the loyal remained steadfast. They would guard mankind not from weakness, but from interference. They would hold back forces that sought to twist God's design. They were not warriors of violence, but warriors of fidelity. They would not win with might, but with unwavering loyalty. And though mankind never saw them, their presence lingered like a silent shield. They stood at the edge of Eden, not to keep humans in, but to keep darkness out. For in that season of innocence, something was drawing near. A whisper, a question, a shadow. Not from earth, from among their own. This was no longer the story of creation. It was becoming the story of conflict. There was a silence in heaven that no mortal ear could ever detect. It was not the silence of peace, but of thought. A kind of stillness that follows revelation. After the creation of man, after God breathed life into dust, certain eyes among the sons of God watched, not out of adoration, but out of deep and growing contemplation. They had witnessed countless acts of divine power. They had seen stars ignited like sparks and comets hurled like arrows through endless skies. They saw worlds born and extinguished like candles before the breath of the Almighty. Yet none of these had ever stirred their minds as much as this. God forming a creature with his own hands, giving it not only life, but likeness. Until that moment, creation had always been distant, commanded, spoken into being. But with man, God drew close. He touched, he shaped, he breathed. This was different. The dissenting ones remained silent amid the songs of praise. They did not protest. They did not speak. They simply watched. But in watching, they began to compare. They saw a being made of earth, weak and ignorant, yet treated with a tenderness they themselves had never known. They who shone like lightning had never felt the breath of God enter their being. They who were immortal had never been invited to walk with God in such personal love. The first fissure did not come from open rebellion. It came from a question, a thought, a quiet whisper within the heart of an immortal. Why? Why such favor upon something so small? Why such attention upon something that bleeds? Why such nearness upon something that could one day betray? These beings were ancient, carved in majesty, guardians of celestial order. Not one of them was fragile. Not one of them slept. Not one of them needed guidance. Yet they saw God kneel beside man, teaching him, walking with him, giving him dominion over the world. They had been witnesses of eternity. He, a child of dust, was given inheritance. And so the silence deepened. Some among the divine council bowed in wonder, acknowledging the mystery of God's will. But others held their worship inside, unable to release it. They felt something heaven had never housed before: comparison. They measured themselves, not against each other, but against the newly loved. At first it was curiosity, then confusion, then quiet resistance. They continued to sing, but their song no longer flowed free. They stood among the faithful, but their allegiance began to waver. They asked themselves questions they dared not speak aloud. What is it that God sees in man that he never sought in us? How can something so low be exalted so high? Pride did not appear as thunder. It whispered like a breeze. One among them, greater in radiance than most, felt the question burn deeper. What if this continued? What if man, frail man, was destined not only to know God, but to one day stand beside him? Could the realms of heaven be shared? Could eternity be given to a creature born yesterday? Such a thought could not be tolerated by a heart that measured glory by rank. Even then, no open defiance occurred. Only a quiet vow. A vow masked behind worship. A vow hidden in stillness. If man is to be crowned, he must first be tested. From that moment, a divide more ancient than sin began to form. On one side stood loyalty, choosing to trust the wisdom of the Creator. On the other stood pride, choosing to test it. The heavenly host remained united in appearance, but within, an unseen fracture ran like a fault line across eternity. The songs of heaven still rang forth, but their harmony had changed. Not all voices shared the same spirit. For the first time, a place once free of rivalry now held comparison. A realm once pure now held ambition. A throne once undisputed now held questions. And all of it began with one simple reality. Man was loved. In the beginning, There was no darkness, no rivalry, no war. Every being that existed flowed from the breath of a perfect God, and within that perfection was the greatest gift creation could ever receive: freedom. God, in his infinite wisdom, did not desire slaves. He desired love. And love, to be true, must be free. Lucifer was not born broken. He was not shaped as an enemy. He stood robed in beauty, forged in brilliance, honored with guardianship of holy places. But beauty without humility can turn dangerous, and glory without surrender can grow toxic. It was not imperfection that birthed evil. It was pride within perfection. It was admiration turned inward, worship turned to self. The heart that was made to reflect glory back to its maker began to hold it, question it, and claim it. Evil was not a creation. It was a decision, a turning. The moment a created will separated itself from the Creator's will, a shadow formed where none had ever been. That shadow first whispered in heaven, then walked in Eden. It did not roar with violence. It reasoned in rebellion. Why bow? Why trust? Why obey? And from those questions a fire spread, not one of light but of disorder. Man, too, stood at the edge of this same freedom. Like Lucifer, he was offered a choice: trust the voice of God, or trust the desire of self. The serpent did not force him. He invited him. In that invitation lay the secret of all rebellion, the suggestion that God's will is not enough, that the self must rise higher. But even then, in the ashes of the fall, God did not abandon his creation. Where pride brought separation, grace brought redemption. Where rebellion opened death, love opened a path back to life. The story of evil is not the story of God's failure, but of creation's freedom. A freedom that can rise or fall. A freedom that can worship or wander. A freedom that can fracture or be healed. So how did evil appear? It appeared the moment a heart, once filled with light, believed it could become its own source. It appeared when glory refused to bow. Evil is not the presence of darkness, but the absence of surrender. And yet, even after the rise of pride and the fall of man, one truth remains unshaken. God's throne never trembled. His plan never broke. For every rebellion, he offers redemption. For every fall, a path to return. Creation may choose its own way, but love will always call it home. If this journey moved your spirit, stay with us. We are not done. There are deeper mysteries, higher revelations, and hidden truths yet to come. Like, share, and subscribe, because here we don't just tell stories, we unveil eternity.